And here we are, here now. And we are both recording, and we're on the record to say that the world revolution is unfolding as it should. There was even an attack on a U.S. military base in Somalia in solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza by a Somalian resistance group, or perhaps Somalian military even,
When did this happen?
just this week.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, the expose of the brutal murder of the Korean civilians by the U.S. terrorists called Special Team 6 warrants a Korean attack on a U.S. installation. Kim Jong-un might not carry that out, but just as when Israel attacked Iran, Iran had the right to, and it did reply. This heinous crime 6 years ago under the Trump administration, um, spying on North Korea, entering North Korea illegally, trying to plant electronic devices to spy on the country, murdering civilians, and then hiding the murder by punctuating their lungs with knives and then sticking their body to the bottom of the ocean. And then Trump denying it. When he's the only person who could have approved such a despicable act.
Yeah.
Um, that right there warrants a Korean attack on the United States somewhere, at least a United States military base. Whether they carry it out or not remains to be seen, and I don't think they will, just based on the geopolitics right now. But those are things that the oppressed nations have a right to retaliate to. So whatever happened in Somalia, U.S. shouldn't have a base there. There's no business there. The base should go. SEAL Team 6 had no business in North Korea, trying to plant something and then spying and then murdering civilians who were just trying to get some food. Instead of retreating or whatever they could have done, they decided to murder people. And then they got awards for it. They got awarded for it. It just shows when I talk about the United States as a criminal nation, and I'm not including all the people, but the leadership and the history and ruling class, this kind of thing that was exposed is what I'm talking about. And they do it with impunity. They do it with no apology. They do it and they brag about it and reward those people who carry it out.
Mm. Yeah, I saw an interview that said a similar statement. And Marwan Barghouti, who is the spokesperson for the Palestinian National Initiative, another political formation there, XCP actually. Um, he was saying he called, the U.S. support for Israel and all the other allies of the free world, called them a fascist alliance.
Hmm.
And that's what it is. Yeah, but he can't get away with, what he wants to do. You know, they do some superficial stuff, but they're losing support for doing it. Like they just changed the Department of Defense to be the Department of War. Okay, so that means they're declaring war on the world. What is this? What's going on here? What
Well,
war? You
it's
know?
declaring war on, they had declared war on somebody, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, should somebody, anybody, like anybody, who doesn't like it,
That's right.
is going to be warred upon. Yeah. Wow. The war goes on in Gaza. It's very depressing. Reminds me of the Warsaw Ghetto, like the fighters in the background here. Partisans who were starving to death, but chose to fight dying. To die fighting. So um, I guess I should, get into of a resistance and made by a Black American woman who's magnificent, and just takes apart the whole sort of, police control mechanism in her legal defense here. So I'd like to show that to you because you sent it to me in the first place, and I think it's magnificent. And if we can show this to the activists and the organizers and the teachers, I think this would be very useful.
Sure.
Here it goes. This is on my Facebook page here. Oh, here it is. Okay. And she's coming up here. And here she is. Oh, I have to get her sound out. There it is.
And I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, let me break this down real simple. Take your pen and paper and take notes. Step 1, gather evidence. First, save everything. I mean everything. Video, badge number, name, and even the time they sneezed wrong. You better save it. Step 2, gather details. Write down their full name, their badge number, and the report number. That's important. Just don't say the tall one with the attitude. We need details, baby. Details. Because that won't work. The tall one. What tall one? I mean, it's a lot of tall ones around. Get their office information. And if it's more than one, get theirs too. Step 3, ask for the bond. B-O-N-D. Bond. Then head on down to the county clerk or chambers of commerce and say, hi, I'd like to get that surety bond of Officer so-and-so, please. Make sure you get the officer surety bond. Make sure you do it. Step 4, get the bond copy. They'll give you a certified copy. And please make sure it's certified. Please. It can't be used in court if it's not certified. That's the golden ticket, and I'm not talking about Willy Wonka. But it's Willy Wonka style, baby. Willy Wonka style. Key, certified copy. Step 5, contact the surety. And for y'all folks to know what it is, it's spelled S-U-E-T-Y. Surety. We're assuring things around here. We're assuring things. We make a power move. We really, really are. Yeah. Anyway, next, call the insurance company that's listed on that bond. Hey, winning. Yeah. Let's keep going. And tell them you want to file a claim. Yes, a claim. On a police officer. Surety bond. Claim. Talk is cheap. We move with action. We win. Let me keep going. And they will give you the form. Step 6, file that claim. Send in that form with all the evidence that you had gathered. Make sure you do it to the T, baby. To the T. And if it's valid, they'll pay damages. I keep telling y'all, there's more ways than... Anyway, I can't say that on here. And the officer may lose their bond. And we're not talking about James Bond. Yeah. And here's the important note that you need to know. But this isn't the same everywhere because each state is different. Some states use blank bonds. So be sure to check your local rules first. But it falls in the same category. Just different names and titles. See, knowledge is power. You can't lose with it. Just don't argue. Use the system. Because they use it on us. So when that officer goes to acting the fool, don't argue with him. Or don't argue with her. All that bonds claim surety. Don't forget to share, like, and follow, and repost. And if you want the tools to protect yourself, stay tuned. Thanks for watching.
There it is. I feel better already.
Wait till you hear this.
Well,
Just when you think it can't get no better,
nothing's going to stop her.
it can. You want to stick around to hear this video. And I mean stick around, stick around. Y'all out here arguing with officers on the street. Let me tell you what you need to do.
There. Okay, we heard you. So there's a big action in Washington, I understand, that's taking on the whole counter-revolution there is happening, from Trump's side. Because that's what it is, like it's a counter-revolution. It's not a right-wing revolution, that's taking over control. They're afraid of losing control. What they're doing is they're trying to claw back the control that they've lost. There's a revolution happening, slow-mo, but it's happening. And this right now is the counter-revolution. You don't have a counter-revolution if there's no revolution to begin with. So what we're experiencing, and we are, a revolution, a social revolution, from the bottom up. But we're not organized enough, to really sort of, step out. It's all, like slow-mo and step by step and here and there and time to time, that kind of stuff. But it's got to be something much more than that. It's got to be convergence.
What demonstration are you talking about in Washington, D.C.?
I heard it announced that there was going to be a demonstration uh, concerning the migrants.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. As I was saying last time, like migrants who come to Canada here, if they want to stay, they just have to, if they have reason to stay, they don't want to go back, to where they were, because they weren't in a good situation. They can just ask, to be refugees here. This is what my last roommate did. And, once you apply to be a refugee, you're taken care of, until your refugee status is determined by a judge, not by a politician. No,
Yep.
there's a refugee board.
Huh.
Yeah. But the United States is the opposite. Unfortunately, this current government in Canada, a liberal government, so-called, has changed the regulations so that Americans trying to get refugee status here in Canada are being blocked.
Yeah, you told me that. Yeah, you mentioned that a few episodes ago that Americans are being discriminated against in the sense of,
Yeah.
well, not discriminated. This made the policy so Americans cannot apply for refugee status,
Yeah,
which
being
which is
targeted,
not good. Which is not
Yeah,
good.
being targeted,
Yeah,
in
because
complicity, with what Trump is doing.
well, Americans by and large are probably split on what Trump is doing, or if the polls say that many don't agree with it, and those
Mm,
who, to me, those who are seeking refuge, seeking to get out of here
mm,
by any means that they can.
mm,
I don't think, well, to me, it's not just that Trump's and U.S. government's policies should impact them when they want to leave somewhere, but I'm finding out that it is that the action of the government do impact how countries or agencies in countries treat you when you get there. If they have an issue with you, well, I mean, if they have an issue with you, with your government, they may have an issue with you. And, that's just something people don't think is ever going to happen to them, but it does,
mm. Yeah, yeah, it could become necessary to seek refuge,
right?
being hunted down, and that's what they want to do, but they can't get away with it. Or they're sort of like, what I call wannabe fascists,
You know,
like a bunch of wannabes. Okay, well, they're not going to get that very far. Like just like this video, just explained, they can be stopped in their tracks. Just have to get organized because we
Well,
are we are more powerful. We are much greater numbers, and the support for Trump is declining. I think this week it's gone down somewhat further than the 38 or 35% that it
mhm.
was previously. I hear it's gone down to, well, not sure.
Well,
Mm.
I mean, um, I want to circle back in a minute to the video, but as far as the support for Trump, some are going to do it because their mom did it. Some are going to do it because their grandpapa says to do it. But Trump's support. Um, my question is, those who support him, what is their relationship to him in the sense of, are they military? Are they rich? Are they just politically backwards? Because to me, again, after what has been exposed, and the so-called speedboat incident is also something of curiosity, because first of all, Venezuela says this event never happened, which brings into question the use of AI to possibly have created this incident. If nobody can find the bodies and there's no verification that it even exists, it could be a video ruse. I remember what happened in Ukraine about a year ago, a year and a half ago, when they did the Kursk invasion. They used the British intelligence and probably CIA and the Ukrainian armed forces created a real ruse. They created a fake incident using AI to make Russians um, allow. It was something that they did. They created an incident on video, which disarmed the Russians in Kursk to literally stand down because they told them something was happening and they thought it was the Russian government giving them some instructions.
Mm.
And the people did stand down and
Mm.
they were able to kill a lot of soldiers in the convoy. It was a really, um, was well carried out, to be honest about it. And everybody was
Mm.
fooled. And for Venezuela to say this didn't happen, it is. I'm not saying Venezuela is right, but I'm not saying they're wrong either. The point is the support this has gotten is also balanced by the horror it has created. Because I did some investigation about this, and per international law, the U.S. could not have killed those people if they did carry out this
Mm.
military action on this speedboat. They can't legally do that.
Mm.
There are
Mm.
UN resolutions about who can be boarded. Seriously, it's on the books. I looked. And unfortunately, the United States is given some rights, which I really didn't know, and I was appalled by it. They are given some rights to board certain ships to look for certain things,
Mm.
but killing people in a speedboat is not one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
They
not. I
could
mean,
prove that
you
they
can
had
look. All you have to
the
go
right
do
to
is
do
look.
so. Yeah.
What you all have to do is look. You look up law of the sea, United Nations practices, policies regarding interdiction of ships on the high seas. It's right there. I looked it up, and it does not say that anybody can just jump on a boat or shoot a boat. I mean, they targeted Somalia, which I found very the Somalia and North Korea were targeted in these UN protocols. But it does not say any, it was despicable. But it doesn't say you can just you can shoot a boat up. No, it doesn't say that. And this is again, these are just like when they had the raid in MacArthur Park in LA about 2 months ago in the summertime, ICE and Border Patrol, and a certain reporter um, got the background story. These facts are censored in the US press. So what I'm saying is, with regard to Trump, I do think that Trump's support is I want to say a fair weather friend support. When people look at their situation, if you look at how much money you're not making, if you look at the fact, Abraham, that 6 months, 7 months, 8 months into his administration, has there been one piece of legislation that's been passed to help people? The answer is no. The big, beautiful bill takes away all the health care for people. So that support thing, anybody supporting Trump, you have to wonder why are they supporting him? Maybe they're rich people. Maybe they identify with the rich. Maybe they're just racist because he. I don't know if you know, Trump took away Secret Service protection for Kamala Harris. Now it is. I want to talk about this because the government is using itself as a retaliation. They haven't taken away from Biden. I doubt he would try it. And I'm gonna say something. Because she's a black woman, he's taking a woman and a black woman, and because she was his opponent in the last election, she now can be killed by anybody. When you take away the protection of a U.S. president, I'm not supporting the government, okay? Don't get me wrong here. But that's part of the protection they get because they were head of state in the country. And they could be a victim of assassination. They could, like it or not. So why take away her protection so she can be killed?
Yeah.
Now this you have to kind of get cut to the chase here. So he's even saying I could actually have all these that the criminal activity could be committed against her by those who have the interest and the means. And who would have the interest in the means? His supporters.
Yeah.
Proud Boys. Remember he did pardon those guys from
Mhm.
January 6th.
Yeah.
And they aren't just sitting around cutting their toenails.
Yeah. They're
So
planning.
I'm just saying, you Department of War taking away protection for Kamala Harris, threatening, talking, making bellicose statements against Kim Jong Un, um, uh, Putin, and Xi Jinping. I mean, this is not the this is the behavior of a cabal of very violent, retaliatory people who need to be removed from office and
Yeah.
watched very carefully. That's dangerous stuff. That to remove the security for the ex vice president and is that's dangerous stuff. And I doubt if a Democrat comes into power after Trump leaves, and if a Democrat tries that, they will get all kind of rebuke from Republicans in Congress. Not one Republican or Democrat that I know of has said anything about the removal of Secret Security protection for Kamala Harris. And again, I'm not just saying because I'm black and she's black. I'm just saying because that's what it amounts to, is allowing anybody to murder a black woman who was a head of, who was a former part of the administration. That's what it's about, man. Or
Yeah.
even just in part of the administration. That's dangerous stuff. That's dangerous stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. It's
Um,
really bad. It's really anyway. Anyway, I
don't
think the
forget about
woman. I think the
don't forget
woman
about
in
the
the video.
pardons. The pardons of the January 6th attempted insurrection there.
Yep.
That means, anybody could get the idea that they can, assassinate, Camilla Harris or anybody else,
Or anybody else.
and then they will be pardoned, after a while, you know,
Yeah.
because you're doing it, for a good cause.
I'm just saying. Maybe that. Maybe no one's thinking that way, but it does allow the possibility of it to occur.
Hmm.
That's what I'm saying. And in U.S. history, that's something you don't that's something that isn't done in U.S. history. It's kind of there's some lines you don't cross, and that's he crossed a real serious line there.
Yeah.
But nobody's talking about it. See,
Yeah.
I'm talking about things nobody's talking about, and this thing about with the soldiers. I mean, this is pretty vicious stuff. And no one, the U.S. The New York Times had to expose it, but Biden knew about it, and Biden did nothing about it. He investigated. He didn't do anything either.
What
What's his-
exactly are you referring to? I missed that.
Okay,
The
okay.
New
When
York Times or
Biden, yeah, Biden found out. Supposedly, Biden's administration uncovered and found out about this attack on North Korea in 2019 by Trump. They investigated. They did nothing.
ah, wow.
So they're all covering up for each other.
Hmm. Hmm.
These kind of, and this is what I'm saying. The bold stance of the woman we just saw from the United States of what you can do. That's a really bold move that a civilian could carry out.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to find, really, we need to investigate how that could be done or contact her and have an interview with her. Because if this can be carried out, we need to find out exactly or find someone who has carried it out and see what happens.
Well, somebody could just go down, to those to the clerk she mentions, and record it, on video, and see what happens, like the procedure, and ask for the procedure to be conducted against, some police officer who was harassing somebody, so immediately, you know, go with that person, record it, and start the whole process and see what happens and find out how to do it in any particular state.
Hmm.
As she says, each state is a bit different,
Right,
And I think here in Canada, it's completely different, because we don't
right,
have such a defense mechanism, as far as I know.
right.
Yeah. But, the Trumpists, the MAGA movement, are thinking and acting like this is their last chance to stop the historical transition that is taking place, even in the United States of America, to socialism, social security, people's consciousness of expecting human rights
Hmm.
and not just, waiting for a job to turn up, because the jobs are not going to be turning up. Job, performance has been disappointing, and so the market has gone down, I understand. And they're acting, in haste, and they're going to be making more and more mistakes. But they're acting, as if, they only have, 3 years to reverse this whole revolutionary process that is underway. And they're desperate. Desperate people are dangerous.
That's right.
Yeah. So can they get away with it? I hear the popularity of this Mr. Trump is in decline. And let him go to hell, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
I have some more news that I'd like to share.
Please share it.
Interesting stuff here. It's in my Facebook page. I'll go back there. Okay. Here she is again. Okay. There she is again. Okay, now, this is the Code Pink movement. And you won't believe how they're sexually harassing her.
Threats. And if we stop supporting genocide, if we stopped, yeah, then we wouldn't face these threats in the world. So I say, yeah.
Yeah, why are you doing this in the hallway? Excuse me. Excuse me, why are you doing this here?
So isn't it ironic that the person who speaks out for peace and international law and respect for U.S. law
Ma'am,
is
why are
getting
you
treated like this in the hallway? I'm obviously such a great
So she's
United
yeah,
States.
she's not.
Probably will be about 100 lawyers signing on to this letter, talking about how the U.S. is
Ma'am, can
violating
you please
Leahy laws, is violating the State Department's own laws, and is and that's going to the judiciary. I want people to see this is how they treat peacemakers.
This is Officer Whitman. She's doing.
Yeah. This is the story on the U.S. base in Somalia being
Oh,
attacked.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. This is a very good podcaster, Mahmoud Odi. He's a Palestinian who comes from Jaffa, inside 48 territory, and he knows he follows the information that he reads, like in the media in both English, Hebrew, and Arabic. So like he's got it. He's got the package, and he's very good, in exposing what's going on. And the media, has no content, in comparison, to what he has to provide. He's on YouTube, of course.
Is,
So that's
is there any has anyone taken response has anyone said that they were the one who carried out the attack in Somalia?
ah,
I'm
not in the
just
video. He doesn't mention the name of an
okay.
organization or a movement. So that's not clear. Now, here we go. Netanyahu prevented the president of France from coming to visit the state of Israel. Why? Because he said that he's going to recognize the Palestine state in September at the General Assembly. So he's not allowed, to come into Israel now. Macron, the president of France, is no longer welcome. Former big ally of Israel is now, like being sanctioned by Israel. Really. Israel reportedly denied Macron's snap visit request, demanding he retract support for a Palestinian
Well,
state.
this
Macron
shows you
refused.
what kind of government Israel is. This right
Yeah.
there is a good expose.
Yeah.
If you're not in our back pocket, you can't even we're not going to recognize you as a head of state. Let's learn from that. Let's learn from that experience. That's
Yeah.
what kind of people they are. You got to
Yeah.
learn when people do something, you should learn about who they are. And
Yeah.
this shows you who Israel is. If they can't control you, which means you're 150% behind them in their notion of us of the Jewish state and the right to seize the land and the right to dismember and wipe out the Palestinians, and they
Yeah.
see Macron as being an enemy. He's almost an enemy.
Yeah.
He's saying you are an enemy. That's fine. Macron should be happy to be put in the enemy camp of capitalist politicians. Not that
Yeah.
it's going to make any difference if he recognizes Israel, but it is making a difference. It shows Israel's hand.
Yeah. Well, it also shows how desperate, the Zionist state is. And, they even sort of impose a certain sort of language, and a dictionary on everybody else, by saying that you have to call Israel a Jewish state. This is the criteria that they put before Mohammed Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, when he said he agreed, to the proposals, for exchange of territory and all of that, for the recognition of the West Bank as a Palestine state. And so Netanyahu, in order to block that, which was required of him legally by the Oslo courts and by UN resolutions, in order to block that, he said, well, you have to recognize Israel first, which they have already done. He said, no, 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 that's not good enough. You have to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, which means that, that anybody who's not Jewish in that state, can be expelled by
Right.
definition.
Yeah, by definition, right.
Yeah. So, of course, Mohammed Abbas said, well, you can call yourself whatever you want, but I don't, like choose to call you, a Jewish state. I just call you Israel, because that's, supposedly what your name is. And so, everything, broke down, on that pretext. And that's why, the Zionists are doing it, because they want to stop any recognition of a Palestinian national identity. And they'll do every device, including, a vocabulary to be imposed upon people. And this is what was used in the definition of anti-Semitism, in the International Human Rights, International Holocaust Remembrance definition that is being used, that is codified as law in many American states. requiring that one has to recognize the right of self-determination of the Jewish people for a state, and the state is the state of Israel. You know, proclaiming that this is, the right of self-determination being expressed by the Zionist movement. However,
Well,
if you look at it empirically, a majority of the Jewish people don't live there, don't want to live there,
but
don't vote there, don't have a right to vote there.
but
And yet, they're saying that they're speaking on behalf of all the Jewish people in the world. No way.
well, but my question is, okay, I have a different question, and just in response to what you just read, and it's gonna. My question is not anti-Semitic in any way. It's just historical. What gives the Jewish people the right to say that the creation of Israel, or what are they using as the basis that the creation of Israel in the current location is self-determination? Yeah, that's my question.
Huh.
Well,
Well,
I'm saying,
they get away with it
yeah,
because the Jewish movement, that was representative, more representative of the Jewish people in Europe, of the Ashkenazim, as called in Europe, of the Jewish nationality in Europe, and its various ethnicities. Well, um, this is a fault of the Nazi Holocaust, because before it
okay,
wasn't the Jewish the Zionist movement that was speaking on behalf of the Jewish people. They were only 8% of the European Ashkenazi Jewish population, and mostly in Central Europe, where they were more assimilated, and not Eastern Europe, where they spoke Yiddish, like me. So, but the Jewish Bund, which was, the most popular of the political movements there, even more popular than the Orthodox parties, was the Jewish socialist movement that was anti-fascist and that, called for fighting fascism in the countries that became their homelands, whether it be Poland or Germany or whatever, nobody's going to tell me, that I can't leave, this, land, where my family has lived on, for 500 years or 1,000 years, just because I'm not a Christian type thing, So the Bund, stood up for the Jewish people there and was, on the front line as well in the 1905 Russian Revolution on behalf of all the Russians. They were fighting back against fascism and the Tsarist regime. So they were all killed, you know, like in my family, there's only out of 400 in both the paternal and maternal sort of families of only out of 400, only four survived. So, that doesn't leave very much, And of course, the Jewish working class was mostly in support of the Jewish Bund and not the Jewish Zionist movement, with some, like a fraction that was proletarian, and they would sort of bounce around between the Russian Communist Party and the Zionist movement type thing. But, mostly the Zionists, were middle class, assimilated people who wanted a state for the sake of their own power because they were being denied power in the countries in which they were living. Instead of fighting against the discrimination, they figured the solution to their problem was to set up a state in which they had the privileges that they can impose upon everybody else. So, that's the Zionist solution. And that's why, like the Zionists can get away with, calling Israel a Jewish state, because there's nobody else, around to contest their version of events. And then they set up all this school system, both in Israel and internationally, that they call the Hebrew educational institutions, in which they indoctrinate, all the next generations of Jewish people because they have the money to set up the schools in the first place, being supported by most of the Jewish national bourgeoisie, except for Soros. And so they're getting away with it, until now. And now, the popular movement has enabled, the younger Jewish people who previously were assimilated, as either Marxist or whatever, to come and identify with their Jewish identity in order to oppose Zionism. And they're learning, step by step, what the Jewish Bund is all about. And they're talking about it. And they're adopting some of the very, principles, such as, being against, having a state for the Jewish people alone, because they're fighting against the nation state, in the first place, which is oppressing the Jewish people. So why do the same thing, again, as a constitutional methodology which only results in the oppression of another people. And the idea of never again means, you're not supposed to do it, to the Palestinians either. But they couldn't care less. They just use that, as a slogan, as a pretext.
So the right to self-determination trumps or denies the Palestinians to occupy. If Palestinians who are occupying the land are placed in a third class position,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I,
That's the crux of the problem. By
I,
claiming the right to
I,
self-determination
I,
in an exclusive way, they're denying the very same right
right,
of self-determination for the Palestinian nation. So, I mean, if they're denying self-determination amongst the Palestinians, then how can they claim it for themselves? They're denying it for themselves as well,
well,
in principle. In
yeah,
principle.
their advocacy of their right to self-determination does not include equality for anyone else who is on that land.
Yeah,
It,
their
it,
claim to
yeah,
self-determination doesn't include self-determination. It's a contradiction in itself.
well,
In logic, that's called a
but,
tautology.
but
Like
it's something people should consider when they talk about the right of self-determination. What say if you're advocating that right, uh, who by definition will be denied that right when that self-determination or
that's a good
denied
question.
equal status
Hmm.
once you invoke your right to this self-determination, does that not necessarily um, demand that someone else will not have a right, or who will be made the second class and third class citizens?
Hmm.
Because if that's the or who, if I am not of the people that is exercising their self-determination, what happens to me?
Hmm.
That's just a very legitimate question someone can
Yeah,
ask.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and with the
Well,
Palestinians, well, you basically get the hell out. That's what happens to you.
yeah, that's what they call self-determination, And then
Okay.
they have a short form for that called self-defense. Like self-defense means they can attack anybody, like who they don't want, around.
Hmm.
It's all
Hmm.
Orwellian speak. But it's the Jewish Bund, had a program for Jewish national self-determination, but not as a state. The state is the problem that is presented to the Jewish people in Europe because minority nationality, like the Jewish people or the Roma people,
Hmm.
are being treated, like as slaves, basically, at the discretion
Hmm.
of the majority population. They
Right?
can be
Yeah.
squeezed, for whatever they can contribute, and then when they want to be gotten rid of, they're gotten rid of, that by
Hmm.
one way or another. Either expulsion starting in 1290 in England, or by extermination as in the and it's gotten worse, not gotten better, and yet, I hear a lot of, leftists saying, oh yes, well, anti-Semitism is obsolete, it doesn't exist anymore, you can assimilate as much as you can. Even Frantz Fanon said that, like Jewish national identity was a matter of choice because we could, pass for, a white person. Well, not according to the white people, so, like it may appear to be so, but and to some extent, that was the case, in Germany, but it was easily reversed. It was very superficial. So the Jewish Bund, concept of national self-determination is not a state. It is called national cultural autonomy, in which, a nationality maintains its identity together with the identity of the country in which it's living in. You can have a dual identity. And this is a principle, even a constitutional principle of national self-determination that applies to every other national minority, including the Black nation. National cultural autonomy, it's called. And it can even be, hooked up to a given territory, like the Black Belt. I sent you, I sent you the most recent graphic, of
Yeah,
the
we
Black
need
nation's
to
concentration of population
well we need to talk
demographically.
we
Incredible,
need
like large territory, could be majority Black nation autonomy in North America.
well um I'm glad you're mentioning this again. Those who advocate that um okay, let me put it to you like this. there are remnants, and I'm saying remnants of people who advocate that still in existence. And I would need to literally do a territorial shift to that part of the country because what happens is you don't really know what's going on in a region until you go there. The media is censored. People, we got to find a way. I do think that what you're saying, if we could have a discussion about it on that territory or maybe in Canada, another part of the world, it might be able to speak a little more freely, um, and see not just the viability of it, but how such a movement could be redeveloped. Because there was an organization, first of all, the Communist Party had promoted the idea of the Black Belt Nation. And then there was a group called the Republic of New Africa who expanded to say, well, 5 states, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, this kind of thing. They had a 5 state solution.
Mhm.
So the idea is not new, but
Mhm.
decades of assimilation by Black politicians and the destruction of the Black liberation movement and the death of advocates of the Republican New Africa solution. The Republican New Africa solution was the modern day um, um, proponent of this movement. I'm going to give you maybe some background that you don't know, or perhaps you do know it. Um,
I
and
knew a little
their
bit about that,
and
but as
their
well, the
leader,
Communist Party in the 30s was advocating, black national autonomy there.
their leader, um, ran for mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. He won the mayorship. Then his son ran for mayor when he died. Chokwe Lumumba, a very prominent Black revolutionary nationalist attorney, moved to Mississippi about 20 years ago, and because his organization was based in Jackson in the 70s. The FBI attacked their office. They killed the FBI agents. That it says something to you. They were ready for the attack, and the FBI wasn't ready to be counterattacked. The RNA 5 went to jail. So the movement kind of took a real dive after that, but people still came back with the idea. So I do think there are two historical periods which we could refer to that are viable in Black history. The modern day communists, and I say modern day, oh, but yeah, modern day communists, um, PSL supports the Black nation thesis. If say you were what they would call a Stalinist, I'm just using terms. I'm using terms, okay, not to throw Stalin in the picture, but a modern day Stalinists support that. The modern day Trotskyists, they don't talk about it. The
Mm.
Maoists, they're for it if people want it, but they're not for it if people don't want it. So you have a leftist tendency that are split on the issue, but you do what like you're saying, you have a historical facts that this has happened in history, and I do think that I need to do more as a member of this body with you to see where that tendency stands in with these with activists because what would happen is well we don't know what would happen. We have to see what would happen if this became a viable a movement with popular interest because it has to be popular interest either within the territory or outside the territory to and the problem would be if people who are there don't want it or not led to embrace it right now and people who are outside the area say yo let's go cook this thing up and begin to come there you might have something like Atlanta or Jackson being maybe the two hubs of the movement, and places like Birmingham, Alabama being historically a hub, but not really. We have to see. But I do think there's something to consider because there is a historical basis for reclaiming or reinitiating interest in and advocacy of that solution. There is. So no
Mhm.
one can say, "Oh, they're imposing this." No, 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 no. This has been around, and we are rekindling the idea. So
Mhm.
thank you very much for that, Abram. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mhm. Yes. You know, in terms of a program, economic program, it fits as well because once there's a Black nation collectivity, that is formed, uh, then it can reclaim, that what which was promised, in the post-slavery period, right? We were talking about this before, that all of the promises, of land and and a donkey, like was never fulfilled. The land was never filled. So as a collectivity, there can be claim made upon the state, demanding that, the territories that are majoritarian, Black nation should be granted its autonomy in order to decide its own fate. And then when the economy takes a dive, and there's unemployment, and such a territory can be established, to provide, a sanctuary, refuge, and employment, for those Black people who cannot find, employment anywhere else. Set up its own economy as well. Then it becomes truly independent. Yeah.
Yeah, the yeah, I think that I think you're saying there's a lot I can say here that I don't have my ideas formulated properly for the broadcast, but there are a lot of examples that we could use in the current for creation of U.S. imperialism and the world situation to draw from because um, uh, the problem has been, I've said this to someone recently, the predominant politics of of integration says that you are part of the United States and therefore you must solve your problem within the context of U.S. law.
Mm,
This approach says no. There is
mm,
an international law and a humanitarian law that is greater than U.S. law, and the
mm,
U.S. law, in fact, keeps us oppressed. So since U.S. law keeps us oppressed, we can no longer look to U.S. law as our savior or as
mm,
something we can
mm,
use as a justification for our fight for liberation. We have to use
mm,
tenets other tenets of governance and other tenets of human rights to defend and advocate for ourselves. And that is the major shift that will have to be made. Malcolm X said the same thing. Even when he was a Nation of Islam, when he left Nation of Islam, he was murdered less than a year later.
mm,
So, his murder was a major um, draw, a major setback for that tendency in the Black movement. And those who promote the Black belt thesis and the five states thesis essentially are saying what you're saying in another way. They're not using U.S. law or the U.S. Constitution as their basis. The U.S. Constitution is the basis of our oppression. So you can't use that as a basis for your freedom. And
mm,
this is um, a drastic difference with even the civil rights movement. They use, and I'm not dissing them. I'm saying they use U.S. law, and U.S.
mm,
law cannot be the basis of your freedom because that's what's causing you to be oppressed, the
mm,
U.S. system. So what you're saying, Abraham, is really good, and I hope that we can speak off camera or have this discussion more
mm,
on this show because I do think that you're hitting on something that we just cannot ignore anymore or not pursue. We have to pursue
mm.
what that would mean in the real world and see if we can see what peoples we can get to agree to further this conversation.
Yes, it sparks the idea, that, if, the law is being used against the Black national entity in which everybody is automatized, and accused, presumed, to be, a criminal, from the get-go,
Right from the get-go.
they can, offer a defense. Well, you know, the law can be used, as well by a Black national collectivity, which says that, it's going to set up a class action suit on behalf of the Black nation of Turtle Island here, claiming its, territorial rights and political autonomy within the context of the social life, that we have here. Okay, that can go through the judiciary and get adopted by the judiciary as a legitimate, class action request, for the interests, of a significant proportion, 17%, 11 to 17%, of the U.S. population. Okay, so it can be approved of, by the judicial process, the suit, and then it, can force, the political apparatus to fulfill this decision of national self-determination of the Black nation. They'd be obliged to do so, otherwise they'd be acting contrary to the law, because you can't expect the majority of the population to grant rights, to minority of the population when they don't have to, because it means, diminution of their own privileges. So you have to go around them through the back door, through the judiciary, and get a decision in favor of a class action suit. I think that's the way to do it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. That's very meaningful and powerful.
So we're coming to about our 45 minutes here.
Okay.
So we can sort of, conclude with any other sort of comments that we have to make. One of which is this article here, like everybody's talking about, how barbaric and evil, and fascistic, the Israelis are towards the Palestinians, but it's been changed. Now, majority of the Israelis back a hostage deal tied to a Gaza withdrawal, according to the latest poll. More than half of the Israeli public agree that the sitting government has not done enough to secure the hostage deal. Families
Yeah.
of hostages held in the Gaza Strip and supporters attend a rally calling for the release of hostages held in Gaza at a hostage square, they call it, in Tel Aviv, which they can, gather, 500,000 people, in a small population and take on the government. But the government isn't paying attention. Nearly 2/3 of the Israeli public are in support of the ceasefire deal. It includes Hamas's release of all the hostages in exchange for a full IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, with nearly half of right-leaning Israelis supporting such a deal. A new study from the Israel Democracy Institute found.
The problem is that Israel's the basis of self-determination as they claim it requires them to occupy the land.
Mm.
We're just talking about that. The settler movement, the Israeli citizens movement for hostage release is a movement no one can necessarily disapprove of. They want the people freed. Okay, well, I got that. But Israel's not going to give up anything to get it. No, they're not.
Oh, they're not talking about ending the occupation of the West
Right,
Bank. Yeah.
right. They're not going to give up
Yeah,
nothing.
just like on Gaza, like they've
Right,
just broken from the state on Gaza.
right, right.
By political orientation, majority of the respondents identified as left-leaning, 92%, and a large majority of centrists, 77%, support a deal that would see the IDF leave Gaza in exchange for the hostages. Okay, so there's a big split
Yeah,
now.
there is. That's a split right there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those who are on the right are more divided, but overall more support a deal, 47%, rather than opposing a deal, 44%. So even the right-wing supporters of Netanyahu are split,
that's
and
good.
more so against him than in
That's
favor of
good.
him.
That's good as a split. That's good as a split. Now, so
Yeah.
what are those who are for what are those who are for the deal going to do, or what can they do now in light of this split? That's the question.
Uh,
What could
well, I think that this decline in support, for the war in Gaza is permanent. It cannot be reversed, no matter, what sort of, successes they pull off, so-called. Okay, so what's coming up is an election. Next year is election year in the Zionist state. But who's offering an alternative to Netanyahu? The left-wingers, like they've been supporting him all along up to this point. So what are they going to do? Like sort of jump into, this new popular sentiment? Who's going to believe them? It's all very murky. That's why I
it's
wish I could
all
get
very
there,
much very true.
provide an alternative as a Jewish Bundes candidate. That's what I want to do. Like I want to go into the Israel elections and say, there is an alternative to Zionism.
Uh,
You don't have to give up being Jewish, to do it, sort of thing. Because that's what the Zionists argue. Like if you're anti-Zionist, then you're giving up being Jewish. You're anti-Jewish, and it's not true. And they want to bury the history of the Jewish blood. And I'm going to slap it in their face. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That's a good thought to end on.
Yeah. So we know what to do. It's a matter of letting other people know how to do it.
And to our viewers, please like and share. Gotta
That's
like
what
and
we're
share.
here for, here and now.
Right.
Okay.